Joining us to join in the conversation is Congressman Matt Cartwright. Congressman Cartwright represents the 17th Congressional District in Pennsylvania as a Democrat and has said on the record that he is called it an outrageous abuse of power, a breach of the public's trust by the IRS. Congressman Cartwright, welcome. Thanks for being on the show this morning.
Oh, nice to be on the show, Tim. I think that's right. Any discussion of this whole topic has to start with the proposition that it is utterly outrageous, and any person or group could possibly be targeted by the IRS for political reasons. I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Give us a sense of what it would mean from a practical standpoint. I mean, you're a member of government oversight and reform. You do your due diligence. The committee does, and several committees in the House and the Senate will also do their duty. But there's some call now for the possibility of a special prosecutor. What does that mean, and is that the direction that this investigation needs to take?
Well, I think we need to get more facts on this situation. I mean, what we've seen from the hearings so far, and from the admissions coming from the IRS, is that conservative political groups were targeted for extra scrutiny in the review of their 501c4 applications. But what's curious to me is that what we keep hearing is that they were not doing it because of political reasons, that it was IRS employees and their supervisors who are not especially political or partisan people deciding to do what they did. We heard it from the IRS field agents in Cincinnati commenting to the press. We heard that directly in his testimony from IRS Inspector General Russell George. It's in his report that it was not a politically motivated idea to scrutinize these conservative groups. So to me, and I said so at the hearing last week, that leads to a couple of questions. Number one, if they did these things for non-political reasons, why did they do them? And number two, is it possible that we're jumping the gun with our outrage about the whole situation? I mean, the problem is that you have to distinguish between scrutiny of political groups, which they're supposed to do in that job, and politically motivated scrutiny of political groups. That's a tall order to make that distinction, in a hyper-partisan atmosphere in Washington these days.
So do you believe that if they were looking for groups that contained particular words or phrases like Tea Party or Patriot, that there was no political component to that whatsoever?
I think that's what they started with. Look, you got to realize it's their job to review these applications and to make sure that they are properly granting tax-exempt status. That is so important because 501c4 organizations are not supposed to be fronts for political activity.
Oh, I understand. I guess part of the reason I'm confused about this is that Lois Lerner, who was the one who made the apology, and they had evidently discussed this whole procedure, how they were going to lay this out, at an event, apologized for this process. In other words, sort of admitting that they did something wrong, then saying when she went in to testify that she did nothing wrong, and then not wanting to answer any more questions. And that's why, if there was an apology, that indicates there was something wrong, and I just don't understand then, if that's the case, then why can't they be forthright about what they did?
I'm with you on that, Tim. I think it was the way the IRS went about what it was doing. That was just plain wrong. It's terrible that they started with conservative groups. But my point is we need the IRS to make the correct decisions about granting 501c4 status to make sure these groups are not just fronts for hidden donors conducting political activity. So my point is let's get more facts. Let's not jump the gun on anything. Let's reserve judgment, and let's really drill down and find out what the facts are, whether we do it with a special prosecutor, whether we do it with more congressional investigations. I think we really need to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and it seems to me we may find out there's less outrage there than we suspect.
I wonder, though, that, again, those two ways of getting at the truth are very different. A special prosecutor can go a lot of places that you can't go. But on the other hand, it also means that it doesn't involve as many members of Congress. And in the case, though, of the testimony, for example, I'll go to Lois Lerner again because she invoked the Fifth. And I wonder, is Congress at this point now stymied in its attempt to get to the information? Because if people are going to not answer questions in committee, you wonder, are you going to be able to get to the truth?
Well, that was something that I asked Russell George myself at the hearing. You know, it was over a year ago that Chairman Issa requested an investigation by the Inspector General. And what he did was not an investigation. What he did was an audit. And he distinguished between the two processes in his testimony. An audit reviews the procedures that were followed, reviews kind of the organizational things that happened. An investigation looks at people in particular and examines what they did as individuals. And I asked Russell George, look, we asked for an investigation. Why didn't you do one? And he said, well, we started with the audit because, basically he's saying that people start to clam up when you do an investigation. And the best procedure is to start with the audit, see what happened on the gross level, and then after that follow up with the investigation. I asked him, please do so. And I really think that's where we ought to start. Is Russell George did fine in his testimony. He was credible. I believed him, and I think that we need him to continue his process. We need him to complete his investigation. I'd like to see that happen before the appointment of a special prosecutor.
There is also some frustration, I think, and I'm saying this, and I believe that it probably is pretty accurate. There are some Americans who are a little frustrated with the idea that in many instances in government, in this particular case as well, there is eventually there's somebody that's supposed to pay the consequence for these things, and it doesn't seem to happen. People who are put on administrative leave that still collect a paycheck, people who are never really identified as somebody who gets away with it or just sort of disappears into the ether, and people are looking for somebody to point to and say, you messed up here. You shouldn't have done this.
Well, that's one of the problems with jumping the gun and appointing a special prosecutor, because one of the first things I think they would probably do is go to one of the standard tools in a prosecutor's arsenal, which is granting immunity to particular witnesses to see what they're going to say about who else can be fingered. I think one of the first things that would happen would be that Lois Lerner would be immunized, and to get her to talk, and then she would be required to talk. She could no longer invoke the Fifth Amendment, and then you might find out there's not much there, and you might find out that the only one that really did anything wrong was Lois Lerner. And as you said, then nobody pays the piper.
Well, we'll see how this proceeds. What are you doing, by the way, with your home district work period this week?
Very active. I was actually so honored yesterday, Tim, to represent the president in awarding a Purple Heart in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. We had Roger Stein, who was injured with shrapnel in his chest in Southeast Asia in 1967 near the Cambodian border. In his separation papers, it was clear that he was entitled to a Purple Heart. He never got one. And he's a very unassuming kind of a person, and he never pushed it. But his local American Legion post wrote us in March, and ordinarily these things take about a year to turn around. We put some extra effort into it, and we actually just got the Purple Heart this week, and I made the award yesterday in Pottsville. Mr. Stein was very choked up. I became emotional. It was a very proud moment for us that we were able to do that for him.
Sometimes justice delayed is not denied, and in this particular case, more so just because of the fact that those Vietnam veterans, when they came back, did not get the kind of welcome that many other veterans did get. So, quite an interesting story. Thanks for being here today and sharing that with us.
Always a pleasure.